Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're ready to make some perfect pet cookies today. So what we're gonna need is a pair of scissors, some toothpicks, all the icing that comes in the bag are extra bags, and something to cover your table with so you don't get a mess in the way. Okay, so now every box should come with a practice sheet so we can move on to that and pick any colors you want. I already did this one in brown to try and get that harder shape out of the way, but I'm gonna go ahead and do these hearts in pink. And make sure the tip of your frosting doesn't touch the paper or the cookie. And if you have any mistakes, you can always go back and just kind of fill in those gaps. Or if you're doing a cookie and you miss a line, you can always go back when it dries and scrape it off with a toothpick and then just do it again. Okay, so now we're gonna look at our shapes. We have a ball of yarn here, which looks like an easier shape, but the circles are actually a bit harder to outline. We'll get there later though. We have a cat face, a dog paw, and a dog bone. Alright, so I figured today we'd start with a dog bone first. It's a relatively easy shape. So go ahead and cut that white nice and thin. You know, don't want it too wide when you're outlining, but don't want it too thin because then it doesn't really come out. You can start wherever. I like to start at a point where lines meet, you know, sort of corner in the shape. And just follow the curved lines around here. And there we go. Alright, so when you're decorating cookies, you always want to do all the outlining first. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to that dog paw you see there. And I grab my brown, just kind of go around. This is sort of like the shape of a flower. So it's not going to look a whole lot like a paw at first, but then when we go in with the white later, it's going to look real nice. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the dog face. I'm going to grab that black, cut it nice and thin for the outlining. And this one we're actually going to keep thin throughout the entire process because we're not really going to be flooding anything with it. But what I'm going to do here is start with the ears. So I'm going to go to the top, bring it down. You can make them as big or small as you want. I'm just going to make it a sort of medium size here. Go to the other side. Doesn't have to match up perfectly. And once you get those out of the way, there's a little tuft of hair up here. You can just do that real quick, and we're done with the black. So then you're going to go ahead and grab your white. Very simple. Just kind of outline these two arches down here. It's going to be around where the dog's mouth and nose are. And then go up here, just kind of join these lines. And we're good to go. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to that cat face there. I'll cut this gray. I have it cut, but I'm going to cut it a little wider. So get that small hole out so the outlining comes out nice, a nice size. Like I said before, I like to start where some of the lines meet. So at a corner of the shape is where I usually start. You don't want to begin the process in the middle of a line or anything. Okay, so now we're going to move on to that last shape, which is a circle, which is going to be a ball of yarn, which looks easy, but it's actually the hardest shape, I'd say, because it's hard to keep that line precise. So what I usually do, I start inside of the circle actually a little bit, bring it out so I get used to holding the bag, and then I just slowly bring it around. And it's not going to be perfect, but follow the shape of the circle as best you can and you should be okay. And don't get it too close to the edge because then it'll overflow when you fill it in with the flood, but we're going to be going over it with lines to show that yarn design anyway, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and move on to the flooding. So you're gonna wanna cut your bag a little wider so it kind of quickens up the process, because you could do it with a thinner cut, but it's gonna take a while. And make sure you have your pile of toothpicks next to you, because if you overflow or if there's any spots sticking up that you wanna fix, it's always good to use a toothpick and go back in with that. But you can start anywhere you'd like pretty much and just kind of fill in all that empty space. You can follow the outline, which I like to do, or you can start right in the middle and kind of work your way out. It's more of a personal preference, but make sure you don't get too much in here so it's overflowing, but you don't want too little either, because then it'll take a while to kind of mix it all in together like this. And once you do that, once you get all that blank space filled in, you can grab your toothpick and just kind of go in like this, fix all these blemishes, all these spots sticking up. Any uneven areas you aren't happy with, you can go ahead and fix that. And we should be good to go. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and move on to that dog paw to flood. So like we did with the white before, we're gonna cut it a bit wider, just enough to quicken up the process. I'm gonna go in here, kind of follow the outlining. Make sure you get enough in here so it doesn't take too long to flood, because it can take a while if you don't put enough icing in the middle. Just kind of mix it up, and it looks messy now, but later on we can go in with a toothpick and kind of fix all those points that are sticking up right now. Alright, so once you have all that negative space filled in, I grab my toothpick. These points that are sticking up, just kind of poke it out, swirl it around until they fall back into the icing. And then we just let it dry. Okay, so now we're gonna take this flooding over to the dog face. So we're gonna start with white, but you're gonna wanna make sure that you have your brown ready, because what we're gonna do, we're gonna fill the white in and then put a little spot here where that kind of eye patch goes, that color that's behind their eye. And you're gonna wanna move sort of quickly with the white, because you wanna get that brown on before it dries too much. So I'll go through here, kind of outline the basic shape. And it does take a while to dry, but it works better when you get it on as quickly as you can while it's still very wet. And then the colors will kind of mix together and get a nice blend. But I got my white down, trying to mix it all together. It looks sort of messy now, but I can go in when I'm done with this brown with a toothpick and kind of fix those spots up. But what I'm going to do is get my brown. I don't want to touch the icing, but I'm just going to go over top and sort of mix in this brown circle here. And it'll look a little rough at first, but once it dries in there and settles with the white, it's going to give us a really nice dog face that'll make a good background to his eyes. And you can do it on the other side, or you don't have to do a spot at all, but I think it's cute, so I'm going to put it in there. Try and fix some of these spots that are sticking up. And then go ahead and move on to my ears. And we can keep this black thin because we're going to need it later for the detailing. And this isn't a lot of space to fill, so I usually start at the smallest spot, kind of work my way down. Shake the tip of the bag so the icing will spread out a little quicker and mix together better than it would. And then just kind of blend it in like so. Move on to the other ear. Once I'm done here, I'll grab my toothpick, once again, finish all these rough patches I've got in here. And once we're done with the ears, you can move it up to this little spot up here if you didn't get it when you initially outlined it. And once we're done with this, it's ready to dry, and we'll move on in a little while to do that detailing. Okay folks, so now you're gonna go ahead and grab your gray. Got this one a bit lighter like we have been doing. And we're gonna do this cat face here. It's a pretty simple shape, I'll start on the smaller areas, so they're less likely to overflow later on. And then I'll kind of do the outline here. Just stick with it. It's easier for me like this, but like I said before, it's more of a personal preference. Whichever ones you want to do. Doesn't really matter. Once you get that icing in there, let's mix it up. Make sure you don't get too close to the edge, because then it could overflow, and we can go back in with a toothpick and fix that if it does happen, but it's much easier if we just skip that process entirely. Then I'll grab my toothpick, kind of fix these couple of points I have sticking up here. See if I can get those down a bit. Alright, so now we're going to move on to that last and final shape. So you're going to grab your pink, cut it a bit wider there, like we have been doing. And like it was with the outlining, this is actually a harder shape to do. So what you want to do is start in the middle and take it nice and slow and just kind of do this swirly sort of shape and just go out. And take your time too, because this is the easiest shape to overflow. And a lot of times if you start on the outside, or if you move too quickly or put too much on here, it'll flood over, and then you have to get your toothpick and wipe it off. And we don't want that. So once I get a good amount on there, and pretty close to the edge, I just kind of mix the rest of it over to fill in those blank spaces. And like I said, you don't want to do this too quickly, because it is easy to overflow these. And once all that's filled in, I'll grab my trusty toothpick, go back in here, fix all these spots sticking up. And after this shape, we should be ready to move on to detailing. Alright guys, so now that we're finished with the flooding, we're going to give it some time to dry. So I'd wait 30, maybe 45 minutes. And you'll know it's ready when it loses that kind of wet, glossy look. And I don't know about you guys, but while I'm waiting, I'm going to go play. Alright, so I'm pretty sure all my cookies are dried now, so I'm going to move on to this dog bone and get some of that detailing on. So I'm going to grab that black, which should still be thin from before because we never cut this one wider. And I'm just going to give it a simple outline, like so, where we originally outlined it with the white, just to make the color inside kind of pop a bit. And you can leave it like this and just have a plain bone, or you can write a name inside, or give it to your dog. But what I'm gonna do, I don't have a dog, but if I did, his name would be Carl with a K. So what I'm gonna do is just write Carl in here. And it's easier if you do uppercase letters. It just usually shows up better. It fits in the cookie. It's a much better look. And you can make it big or small, but I kind of want mine to pop. I'm going to put an exclamation point at the end too, just to let Carl know that I really do love him. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to that dog paw here. You could recut or rebag this white if you wanted to, but I'm just going to keep it wide because the shape we're putting inside is pretty simple. So what I'm going to do is sort of put an upside down heart here, like so, to show the bottom of the paw. Just fill that in, that'll dry nicely. And then come up here and get those individual parts in. Just simple circles. This is one of the easier shapes, not a lot of detail we have to do. And you can get creative and you don't need to do this exact design. You could write something on here if you want. Do a different design if you'd like, but this is the sort of basic dog paw we do here at D is for Delicious. So now we're going to detail this dog face here. It should be dry. This is one of the simpler techniques we do. It's not very hard. You just practically need 2 little black dots here. One in the spot that we put there specifically for the eye, and then one right next to it, like so. And then you can move down here. Give him a cute little nose. And he's good to go. Okay, so now we're going to move on to this cat face. And it gets a bit tricky here because we're going to have to rebag this pink and the gray, but I'll show you how to do that here. So you're going to want to move your icing as far down as you can because we want to cut this wide up here to get this icing out of here. So once you get it moved down, I'm going to cut it nice and wide like so. And go ahead and grab one of the bags that should have come in the cookie kit you received. I put it in, and once it's inside near the bottom there, I kind of grip it so the icing won't come out the top. So it just squeezes all through that big hole there. I pulled it out. The first bag's empty, then the new bag's full. And once you do this, you can tie it in a knot. Use a twisty tie, a rubber band, a shoelace, anything really, just to make sure the icing doesn't come out the back. So I'll go ahead and get this done and then move on to the detailing. Okay guys, so now that we got our pink and our gray both rebagged with the thinner cuts, we're going to move on to this cat face. So I like to usually start on the nose. It's this sort of upside down triangle, a pretty simple shape, and you want to center it, put it down lower. It doesn't really matter really, because you can tell it's a nose either way. So once you get that there, you're going to do the same thing up where the ears are. Kind of get these little pink triangles in there. And once we're finished with this, you want to grab your black here and add this little mouth. It's pretty much just a couple arches that come down under this nose here. And then my cat has their eyes closed, but you can do whatever you'd like with it. It's pretty easy this way. You just simple upside down arch there. And when we're done with the black, you grab your gray, you cut it nice and thin, because this is for the whiskers, but you want to be pretty thin. And you just put 2 or 3 lines going out to the edge of the cookie, like so. Move to the other side, and when we're done with this, the final thing we're going to do on the cat is just a small detail up here by the ears, just to give it some more character. Some more detail up here. So just outline the pink with some more gray. And once you have that down, we're good to move on. Okay, so now we're going to move on to this final shape to detail, which is pretty much the easiest shape to detail. It's a ball of yarn. You can just put squiggly lines over it, kind of add your own design really. It's more, you have a lot of freedom as an artist with this shape to do whatever you want. So I'm just going to start at the bottom here. And move back and forth like so. Give that sort of stringy effect, you know? And then once I do that, I'm going to add a little part here. Kind of show where the ball of yarn ties together. And after that, I'm pretty much done. There's your ball of yarn. Well, that about wraps it up here, folks. I think we're all done with our cookies here. I don't know about you guys, but I'm gonna go eat me some yummy pet themed cookies.